Since childhood, we all carry memories of the house where we grew up. For some, they're memories of laughter echoing through the hallways, the smell of food wafting from the kitchen, or the feeling of security when closing our eyes in our own room. But what if those same walls hid secrets our childish eyes couldn't fathom? Sometimes what seemed like just a creaking sound was actually a dark calling. Today, you'll discover stories where childhood mingles with terror, revealing that some houses hold memories that should never be revisited. Welcome to your own darkness. Childhood is a mysterious territory within each of us. We hold memories that seem as sweet as a dream, but when revisited, carry a strange sense of unease. When thinking about the house where we grew up, nostalgia often arises first. Hallways illuminated by afternoon light, the familiar sounds of doors slamming, the smell of wet earth wafting through the window on rainy days. But at the same time, there's something deeper, a layer of shadows we can never fully explain. This duality between comfort and discomfort makes childhood memories fertile ground for terror, because as children we are more open to feeling what adults ignore. It is at this point that the weight of nostalgia begins. Memories that seem sweet, but become unsettling when we revisit them with today's eyes. Imagine, for example, the room you slept in as a child. Perhaps the walls were decorated with soft colors or childish drawings. Perhaps there were toys scattered across the floor. And yet, when you turned out the lights, a chill ran down your spine. It was as if the darkness had a will of its own, slowly approaching, trying to fill every corner with silence. At that age, few wonder where this feeling comes from. Some run to their parents' room, others hide under the blanket, but everyone carries the impression that something was there, watching, waiting for the right moment to approach. What memory doesn't reveal is whether it was just a figment of our imagination, or if there was something real trying to connect with the vulnerable child we once were. The weight of nostalgia also manifests itself when we revisit our home as adults. Many have experienced returning to their childhood home and noticing how everything seems smaller, how the hallways that seemed endless are now shorter, and how the garden seems to have shrunk. But along with this strangeness comes a subtle discomfort. Certain areas still evoke a shiver. Perhaps it's the attic we never dared enter, or the basement our parents kept locked. It's as if the walls still whisper memories we'd rather forget. Looking at that place, we feel as if the shadows haven't diminished. They simply became more intense over time. Another curious point is how childhood memories embellish certain details, but also intensify fears. A tall tree in the backyard, for example, could be seen as a refuge during the day, but at night it seemed to transform into a monstrous figure, casting shadows that creaked across the room. The wind blowing through the cracks in the window sounded like distant voices to a child. And the creaking of the floorboards, which seem normal today, back then, were slow footsteps climbing the stairs toward the bedroom. Time transforms these memories into nostalgia, but when we revisit them closely, we realize that the fear never completely left us. There's also the psychological aspect. Experts say that our childhood memories are shaped not only by what happened, but by how we felt. This means that the fears of that time weren't exaggerations. They were the purest way of interpreting the unknown. When a child says there's someone in their room, it's easy for an adult to dismiss it as imagination. But what if, in fact, she's capturing something that adult eyes can no longer perceive? Nostalgia, in this case, isn't just a fond memory. It's a warning that something was there all along, and that it may still be lurking. Some real-life accounts show how this weight lingers. People who have returned to their childhood homes report smelling unexplained odors, hearing the creaking of furniture that no longer exists, or even seeing reflections in mirrors of faces that aren't theirs. The adult mind tries to rationalize, but the body responds with chills and cold sweats. It's no wonder so many horror stories begin in seemingly ordinary homes, because the home isn't just a physical space. It's a vault that holds our memories, both the good and the disturbing. And when we stop to think, we realize that nostalgia has a dangerous effect. It leads us to believe that the past was safer, simpler, more innocent. But what if that past was also filled with silent presences just waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves? The weight of nostalgia is precisely this. discovering that what we call home may have actually been our first contact with the unknown. This realization paves the way for something even more disturbing. Because if our childhood home already conveyed this mixture of security and fear, what about the places that were completely forbidden? The dark locked rooms or simply avoided by adults? Places that held an irresistible mystery to a child's eyes, but that hid secrets no one should know. Every childhood home holds places that were, in some way, forbidden. It could be a dusty attic, a locked basement, or even that rarely used room that seemed to carry a strange silence, too heavy to ignore. Children, naturally curious, are always drawn to what they can't have, what they can't see. And it is precisely in this desire to transcend imposed limits that many of the most disturbing memories begin to emerge. The forbidden, after all, is not just a physical barrier. It becomes an invitation to the unknown. An attic, for example, may seem like nothing more than a storage room filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture. But to a child, it is a portal to something inexplicable. The smell of damp wood, the darkness that swallows the light of a flashlight, the creaking of the floorboards under small feet, all of this creates an atmosphere beyond imagination. Many report that upon finally entering these places, they felt a presence, as if the space were watching whoever dared break the rules. A forgotten toy might seem out of place, a chair turned over with its back turned to look like someone was waiting in the corner. And in some cases, low, almost whispered voices seemed to emerge from the walls, making it clear that this room held stories no one would want to tell aloud. The basement, in turn, is a classic horror story. Narrow stairs descend into a damp, dark space where electric light rarely reaches every corner. Children who defied orders not to enter often describe a physical sensation, the air growing thicker, their skin crawling, their heart racing as if something were waiting for them. And most disturbingly, many of these experiences don't end with simply escaping the basement. Fear, once awakened, follows the individual outside, making every hallway in the house seem darker. It's as if the forbidden room had the power to infect every memory of the house, spreading its silent darkness. There are also those rooms that, although part of the routine of the house, always seemed closed, rarely used. Perhaps it was a guest room or a space adults avoided, always with the excuse that it was out of use. But children notice more than we imagine. They notice when adults change their tone, when their eyes avoid a specific door. This perception fuels curiosity and at the same time instills a fear that grows over time. There are countless accounts of people who, as children, opened these rooms only to see motionless shadows, stains on the walls shaped like faces, or even beds covered with sheets that seemed to hide someone lying there, motionless, waiting. These forbidden rooms are also the setting for real stories. People tell of how, years later, they discovered that their basements served as shelters in times of war, or that locked rooms were kept that way because they had belonged to family members who died there, leaving invisible marks. As children, they didn't understand the weight of these stories. They only felt the discomfort. But over time, as they understand what really happened, the disturbing memories return even more strongly. Now with a dark meaning, psychologically, the fascination with the forbidden connects with childhood development. When we're told, "Don't enter," the young brain understands it as a challenge. However, the environment charged with silence and mystery stimulates real feelings of fear. This explains why so many adults still vividly remember the forbidden rooms in their homes, even decades later. The trauma comes not only from the experience, but from what it symbolized. The idea that there were parts of the house, and perhaps the family, that were off limits. And most intriguingly, in many of these stories, the forbidden seem to fight back. Children report hearing footsteps coming from the attic, even though they've never gone upstairs. Others claim that when touching the basement doorknob, they felt the doorknob move as if someone were on the other side. There are also those who swear they saw lights flickering beneath the crack in a locked room's door, lights that disappeared when they called out to adults. These are memories that, for the child's mind, became recurring nightmares, and that, for the adult mind, transform into disturbing questions. Was it imagination or reality? These forbidden spaces represent more than walls and doors. They are symbols of secrets, of untold stories, of presences that prefer to remain hidden. And perhaps that's why the fear is so enduring. Because every time we think of our childhood homes, we also remember the places we should never have explored. And deep down, we know that perhaps we made the wrong choice in opening that door. And if until now we've spoken of locked places and heavy silences, it was an ordinary night, silent and seemingly peaceful, when the first sign that the house held something more than memories began to manifest itself. The previously familiar atmosphere seemed to change as the sun disappeared behind the ancient windows. The creaking of the floorboards in the hallway sounded louder than it should have, as if invisible footsteps were crossing the wooden floor. Our hearts raced, because every detail, every noise, seemed to transform into a subtle warning that we were not alone inside. It was as if the house itself was breathing, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true face. The first experiences could be mistaken for a child's overactive imagination. Shadows stretching across the walls, whispers reminiscent of the wind, and the sudden discomfort of being watched even when no one was around. But as the days passed, these signs became impossible to ignore. The lights flickered. Even without power outages, doors opened slowly, creaking as if invisible hands were pushing against the heavy wood, and objects left in one place appeared in another, as if they had been moved purposefully. The first real encounter, however, wasn't with noises or shadows. It was with an overwhelming sensation, a weight in the air that couldn't be explained. Goosebumps tingled throughout the body, skin grew cold, and breath became shallow, as if the very presence of something invisible drained the life energy of anyone nearby. This presence seemed to concentrate in a specific spot in the house, the old bedroom, the one that always remained closed, even when there was no reason for it. As one approached the door, it was impossible not to feel one's heart racing and a strange resistance, as if crossing that space meant crossing into a completely different reality. It was at that moment that fear ceased to be child's play and became a mark etched in the memory. The unknown became palpable, no longer a figment of the mind, but a real and undeniable presence. The first encounter with the inexplicable transforms the environment into a prison of uncertainty. With every noise, every shadow, the question arises, is it imagination or a vivid reminder that this place holds secrets that should never be revealed? This question would become the starting point for even more disturbing nights. Over time, fear ceased to be merely a product of the present and began to awaken dormant memories. The house seemed haunted not only by invisible presences, but also by memories that had been buried deep within the mind. Walking through the hallways, it was impossible not to feel the weight of childhood, as if every wall carried fragments of forgotten moments. Old photographs, dusty and yellowed with age, began to emerge from drawers that had never been opened before, revealing familiar faces yet strangely distorted by the gaze of memory. They were memories that had somehow been erased, but which returned with force, as if the house itself had the power to rewrite them before our eyes. These memories were accompanied by a feeling of profound unease, as if something were wrong with every detail. Childhood toys, which had once brought joy, now aroused fear. Dolls seemed to watch silently, with fixed, impenetrable eyes, and children's books whispered as they were turned. What had once been innocence now carried a dark weight, transforming happy memories into disturbing enigmas. It was as if every memory was manipulated by something invisible, shaping the perception of the past in a cycle of constant doubt. The nights became even more unsettling. Intense, vivid dreams brought images of games interrupted by unknown whispers, of doors closing by themselves, and of a hidden presence that always watched from a distance. Upon awakening, the sensation was that the dreams were not just dreams, but real memories that time had hidden, now resurrected by the invisible force of the house. The past was no longer buried. It pulsed, alive in the walls, ready to intertwine with the present in a tangle of mystery. And then the inevitable question arose. What else had been forgotten? What secrets had the mind erased to protect those who lived there? Every forgotten detail seemed to return in distorted form, and this fragmented reconstruction of childhood became as frightening as the house's own inexplicable phenomena. It was the point where past and present merged into an inseparable web, and the more memories returned, the deeper the mystery deepened. The next step was inevitable, discovering whether those memories were merely echoes of the mind or disturbing revelations of secrets the house guarded with cruel zeal.